Well, what's going on? What is this thing?
One of our patrolmen stumbled over this.
Oh, my God.
The block is nearly split apart. We found the overhead cams 30 feet away. We can only hope the body's sold for scrap. They went out of their way to gouge the sides of every piston, and the turbo was separated from the housing and shoved right up the exhaust pipe.
What is that smell?
Look at the clutch.
Excuse me.
Whoever did this didn't just dismantle it. I mean, they took their time, they had fun, they were very systematic.
You okay? You're making a lot of noise down here.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get this bolt in here and I've dropped it in like 15 times.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Now I know I took a little bit of a hiatus due to some personal issues and some things that I had going on, which I know you guys don't really care about. What you do care about is this lump sitting next to me here. I did get everything put together. Everything has been running. The past couple months I've been trying to work the bugs out to make sure what I'm about to show you will actually work for you and you're not going to do what I did and blow something up. So I'd like to take this time to thank all the subscribers and supporters who shared some kind words within the past couple of months. I know a couple of you thought I might not actually read them or they may fall on deaf ears, but not only did I read them, but they actually helped me out more than you could ever know. So once again, thank you. So now that we got the formalities out of the way, let's get to why we're really here, working on this beast. Now if you remember the last episode, I informed you that I blew out one of the ceramic turbos right out of the back of the exhaust here, so we're going to be having to replace those. So if you remember the equipment we're going to try to wedge in there, there's twin 2860R-5s. They're a little bit bigger than stock, but they will also provide us more power. So before we begin, I actually want to give you a couple tips and pointers, some things that you might want to consider before we actually start. So first and foremost, you're going to want to go through your socket set and find the shortest or lowest profile socket you can find. Now what am I talking about? You can see I have a couple different sets here. This one's actually smaller than the other two. You're going to want to find the smallest one you can because space is a commodity you don't have. Secondly, you might want to go ahead and get yourself the steel braided line kit that I actually showed you in the previous episode of all the equipment that I'm going to be installing. The hard line kit that you have here is a snake's nest, and it'll actually probably save you an hour, maybe more, if you just decide to cut these out and then replace them with the steel braided lines versus trying to do like I did and get them out in one piece because I'm a glutton for punishment. And last but not least, you might want to find yourself a small concrete room where you can close yourself in, sob, and contemplate your life decisions. So without further ado, let's roll up our sleeves and get scraped up.
The first thing you're going to want to do is take off all of the intake piping. That should be fairly simple. You're just going to need a screwdriver, and I would suggest maybe some WD-40, something like that, to kind of loosen up the clamps. Mine were a little bit crusty, and I had to kind of pry them off, so that helped with that. But start with getting all that out of the way, so you can expose most of the coolant lines and everything like that. And then also I would suggest disconnecting the dump pipes, which I don't have mine in for this demonstration, but yeah. I would disconnect the dump pipes from your downpipe, just to make sure that you don't have to worry about that later. So yeah, once you get the intake piping out of the way and the dump pipes disconnected from your downpipe, you should be looking at a lot of lines and stuff. There'll be more here than what you see. There are some air lines that are connected to this here. I kind of moved all that out of the way. That's actually a part of the old boost solenoid setup. You can actually see this line here with the caps on it there and there. That's also part of that. Mainly what you're going to want to focus on is getting these out of the way. This one I was not able to get out of the way here, so I had to work around it. But the top one, definitely you're going to want to get that out of the way. Start by disconnecting it. It is the one that goes over the front of the cam cover. So you're going to disconnect that there and break it loose over here. And there's going to be a giant nut on the banjo bolt right here. Once you break that loose, you can get this out of the way. Now once that's out of the way, you'll have this fitting here in the middle and then two lines going towards either turbos. You can kind of see where that one's connected or should be connected. For this one here, I was actually able to break this loose. I do believe it's a 17 mil. You can kind of get the wrench in there kind of sideways and break it loose this way. And you get this out of the way. Same thing with this side. With the rear one, I actually wasn't able to get it off, so when I pulled the turbo, that was still attached. But like I said, this job, you just kind of see what you can get out of the way and just start breaking stuff loose. So once you get that out of the way, which won't be as easy as that, from this point, I moved into the little inlet pipes, which was a little bit interesting. Kind of had to use a bit of a hack. Where they're placed, not a lot of room, and they're actually hex head bolts, or Allen head bolts. So what I ended up using was a set like this. You can get one of these hex heads, and then actually mount that to a socket, and then the socket to extensions and swivels and whatever else you need. And this actually came into play to get the manifolds off as well for me, because there's a couple tight spots. But just to get those J-pipes out, like I said, use one of those to fit into the hex head bolt with a socket, extensions, swivels, whatever you need. And you can kind of wiggle those out of there, both front and back. So again, it won't be that easy for you. Now once you've gotten all the dump pipes out of the way, you should, at least for the front turbo, it should look something similar to this. You won't have the room here yet because we wouldn't have loosened that, but obviously I skipped a couple steps. Like I said, I cleared as much as I could out of here. I left my power steering reservoir in. If you remove that, that'd give you a little bit more room. If you're gonna bump your AC unit, you're not gonna be using it anymore, take that out, because that will give you a lot of room. You can actually kind of see the tore up line down there that's just in the way. So if you're planning on removing your AC, this is the time to do it. So that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the hard part, getting the turbos and the manifolds out of this beast. And the way I have it set up right now, you should be able to see how much room you have to work with. If you look at the front turbo, there's no bolts holding it in. There's no, the bracket that's underneath the turbo is out. All of the lines that are underneath are out, and look, it's still pretty much in place. You can wiggle it, move it around and that kind of stuff, but that just goes to show you the front turbo or turbo one, there's not a lot of wiggle room. Now if you look back here, there's a lot more room to work with once you get the bolts loose. So the way I ended up doing it, I took these bolts out that hold the turbo to the manifold here on all four sides, so that way you can kind of get some wiggle room. You can see how that one's kind of wiggling down now. That will enable you to get a wrench into some of these harder to reach bolt areas, which of course I can't get lighting to. And underneath these top bolts, there's a row of bolts underneath here that are very difficult to get to, especially the front one. So what I ended up doing was, like I said, I dropped the turbo down here, which will give you enough room on the rear turbo to actually get the manifold out. And at that point, got the manifold out, then I was able to turn the turbo and break the lines on the side of it and then pull the rear turbo out first. At that point I was able to, with all this extra room here, was to get my hand underneath the bottom of this manifold so I can get this one loose and out, so then I can actually get the turbo out, because there is no way really to just drop the turbo from the bottom. It's infinitely easier just to pull it out. So alright, so I have that turbo and manifold out, and now you can kind of see what's underneath here. Like I said, all the lines and everything are I pulled out. Here, this is the V I was mentioning earlier. This is for your coolants. This V splits to both turbos, and then over here underneath you can kind of see, I'll get my hand right down in there. That's your oil from the block to both turbos. Now you're not going to be able to really get to these because of the dump pipes that come off the back of the turbos here. That obstructs a lot of this. The more you remove and the more you wiggle the turbos, you can kind of get to some of the bolts and break them. But when I pulled the rear turbo, the overflow line that meets up at the top here and the oil line that goes all the way underneath were still attached to it. So you might not be able to break all the lines, and if you go the route that I went, doing an aftermarket line kit
and you're not too concerned with the health of your lines, you should be able to pull them out of there with a little jostling and creative thinking, we'll say. On the subject of creative thinking, you're going to need to do a little bit of that to get these out. Like I said, once you get this manifold out of here, you can actually reach underneath here to get to some of these bolts, but there's one, of course, those two down in there, and the one over there are going to be the tricky ones. Now, there are two tricks that I learned in doing this that would help you get those things out of there with minimal headache. Here I have a set of, or a couple different sets of sockets. If you're like me, over the years you've accumulated socket sets just from here, there, and everywhere else. The general socket set that I was working with was about this height. One of the other socket sets, if you look here, this one's a lower profile one compared to all the other ones in this set. Try to find the lowest profile socket, because you just barely don't have enough room with a socket wrench and this to get behind that manifold. You can, if you have a lower profile one like this and a very low profile socket or socket wrench, you can get this behind there and actually break those bolts loose. Of course, I figured that out with one bolt to go, that would just fit right back there. But to get everything out, what I ended up doing, I used a kit like this, and in this kit you have this adapter here. If you notice, this adapter will work on the end of a socket. So it's a 12 mil, which I got a 12 mil and jammed this into there. For all intents and purposes, we'll say this is 12 mil. So you have a little bit something like this. So that can go onto the bolts, and then you have this hex head at the end. So at this point, what I did was I got a basic close-ended wrench and slipped it onto the end of this. Here's the wrench here, what is it, a 1/4? And just slip that onto the end there. And then use that, I linked a wrench onto the back of this for leverage, and I use that to break those loose. So essentially what you're going to be doing is dropping it down there. And see, once you get the manifold out here, then you'll have enough room to kind of turn the turbo enough like this, where you can get to these two banjo bolts here, break it loose, and then pull the turbo out. Or you can, like I said, you'll still have a dump pipe here, so this is going to be pretty obstructed, but you should at least be able to break the coolant lines loose, since all of this is going to be out of the way. Yeah, and once you get those these two banjo bolts broken loose, and I'm assuming you have the brackets that are underneath the turbos, because there are two brackets that hold this in place, this will just pull right out. Once that turbo's out of the way, here's essentially what you'll be working with here. Where the paper towels are, I clogged them up. That's the oil drain lines, or the return lines into the back to the engine from the turbo. There's the other one there. Your oil fitting here, which will end up getting replaced. Here's the coolant one, which I already have the fittings for the steel braided lines in there. Here's the brace or motor mount, which is why you have no room to actually drop the turbo down on the front one. And over here you can see there's a whole lot of room to drop that turbo. Problem is, like I said, there are going to be some brackets underneath the turbo holding it up, as well as all the curly Q lines and everything that are underneath it, preventing you from getting the space you need to make this easy. So that's how you'll get a giant gaping hole where fun times used to be. Here you can see my finished product here. Thank you for watching this video. Join me on the next one, where we can show you how to wrap yours up.